The smartest AI model does not automatically win anymore. That sounds wrong at first, because most of the AI conversation still feels like a scoreboard. Who has the best model? Who writes the best code? Who reasons the longest? Who beats who on the benchmark chart? Who is ahead this week? But the last few days have made something very clear. The AI race is no longer only about raw intelligence. It is about access. It is about price. It is about trust. It is about safety. It is about who can actually use the model when they need it. And it is about who can build real tools on top of it, without the ground moving underneath them. That is the story connecting Anthropic, Claude Fable 5, Claude Sonnet 5, GLM 5.2, and the bigger global AI market right now. Anthropic brought Fable 5 back after United States export control restrictions forced the company to suspend access to Fable 5 and Mythos 5 for all users. Then Anthropic launched Claude Sonnet 5 as a stronger everyday default across all plans, including Free and Pro. At the same time, Z.ai's GLM 5.2 is getting attention as a cheaper open-weight model with strong long horizon coding and agent benchmark claims. Those stories sound separate. One is about a frontier model returning. One is about a new everyday Claude model. One is about a Chinese open-weight model getting developer attention. But together, they tell a bigger story. The AI race is becoming more practical. It is not just who has the most powerful model in a lab. It is which model can people actually access? Which model is affordable enough to build with? Which model is reliable enough for daily workflows? Which model is trusted enough for sensitive work? Which model is flexible enough for developers? Which model stays available when regulation, pricing, or geopolitics enters the room? That is the shift. For a while, the AI world felt like a race toward the biggest brain. Every new launch was judged by whether it beat the previous leader. But once AI moves into real work, the standard changes. A model can be brilliant and still be difficult to use if it is too expensive. A model can be powerful and still be risky if access keeps changing. A model can win a benchmark and still fail a real workflow if the interface is bad, the latency is poor, or the data rules do not fit the user. A model can be cheaper and still not be right for sensitive information. That is why today's story matters, because Anthropic's Fable 5 return is not just a comeback story. It is a case study in what happens when a powerful model is good enough to trigger government concern, important enough for users to miss it, and valuable enough for the company to negotiate its way back online with stronger safeguards. Anthropic says Fable 5 and Mythos 5 were released on June 9th. Then, on June 12th, the United States government applied export controls to those models. Anthropic says the directive required the company to restrict access by foreign nationals, whether inside or outside the United States. Because the order took effect immediately, and Anthropic says it had no reliable way to verify nationality in real time, it suspended access to both models for all users. That is the part that matters for everyday users. A tool can be available one day, then it can disappear from the workflow because of a control layer far above the user. That does not mean the control layer was automatically wrong. Anthropic says the issue followed a report from Amazon researchers about a method of bypassing Fable 5 safeguards in a cybersecurity setting. Anthropic says it worked with the government and partners, improved classifiers, and brought Fable 5 back with stricter safeguards. So this is not a cartoon story where government equals bad and company equals good. It is more complicated. Powerful models can create real risk. Safety systems can matter. Government oversight can have a legitimate role, but users still experience the practical result. The model is there, then it is not. Then it returns with changes. That changes how people think about AI. Because if a model becomes part of your work, access is no longer a small detail. Access becomes part of the product. Now, Anthropic is not standing still. That is the other important part of the story. Fable 5 comes back with new safeguards, but Anthropic also launches Claude Sonnet 5 as a much more accessible model for everyday use. And that matters because Sonnet is the kind of model most people will actually touch. Not every user needs the absolute top model, Not every user is doing advanced cybersecurity. Not every user is running complex research pipelines. Most people need a model that is fast, capable, affordable, and available inside the tools they already use. That is where Sonnet 5 becomes interesting. Anthropic describes Sonnet 5 as its most agentic Sonnet model yet. It says Sonnet 5 can plan, use tools like browsers and terminals, and run autonomously at a level that recently required larger and more expensive models. It is available across all plans. It is the default model for free and pro users. And on the API, Anthropic launched it with introductory pricing that makes it more practical for developers who care about cost. That is a very different type of AI progress. It is not only we made the biggest model bigger, it is we moved more capability into the model more people can use. That is a huge everyday user point, because the real AI market is not only built around the top model at the top price, it is built around the model that can become default, the model that can answer a student, the model that can help a creator, the model that can run inside a coding assistant, the model that can support a small business workflow, the model that can power a customer service tool, the model that can fit into an app without making the app too expensive to operate. This is where the race changes. A company can win attention with the most impressive model, but it wins users by making strong capability usable at scale. That is why Sonnet 5 may be just as important to everyday users as Fable 5. Fable 5 is the high-end signal. Sonnet 5 is the access signal. One says, this is how far the frontier can go. The other says, this is how much better the default experience can become. And that is where GLM 5.2 enters the story. Because while Anthropic is trying to balance frontier performance, safeguards, access, and government oversight, Z.ai is pushing a different kind of pressure into the market. GLM 5.2 is getting attention because it claims strong performance on long horizon coding and agent tasks while being open weight and cheaper to run. That creates a different kind of appeal. For a large company with sensitive data, a trusted United States lab may still feel safer. For a regulated enterprise, compliance and jurisdiction matter. For a developer building a high-volume tool, price can matter more than having the absolute best answer on every task. For a startup, the question might be, can I afford to run this at scale? For an indie builder, the question might be, can I experiment without burning through money? For an international user, the question might be, can I access this model without being caught in someone else's policy fight? That is why GLM 5.2 is more than another model card. It represents a market workaround. If the best-known frontier models become more controlled, more expensive, or less predictable, users do not simply stop building. They look around, they compare, they test cheaper models, they route some tasks to one provider and some tasks to another. They ask whether open-weight models are good enough. They ask whether the cost savings justify the trade-offs. They ask whether the tool is safe for sensitive work or only good for general tasks. That is the new AI behavior. People are not only asking which model is smartest, they are asking which model fits the job. This is the section where the story could easily become too simple. It would be easy to say, United States models are getting restricted, China models are getting cheaper, so everyone will switch. But that is not the honest version. The honest version is that different users have different needs. A benchmark can show that GLM 5.2 is strong on specific coding tasks. That does not automatically mean it is better for every writer, every company, every student, every developer, every agent, or every sensitive workflow. Benchmarks are helpful. They are not the whole experience. A real workflow includes latency, reliability, tool support, documentation, integrations, data handling, compliance, billing, customer support, safety behavior, prompt style, model consistency, and trust. That is why the cheapest model does not always win. If you are building a toy project, cheaper access can be exciting. If you are building a small internal tool, a cheaper model may unlock something that would otherwise be too expensive. If you are building a consumer app with high volume usage, price may decide whether your idea can survive. But if you are handling legal documents, medical context, customer data, company strategy, security work, or private intellectual property, you may care more about trust and compliance than token cost. That is why Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, and other major providers still matter. They are not only selling intelligence, they are selling reliability. They are selling ecosystem depth. They are selling safety systems. They are selling enterprise relationships. They are selling documentation and support. They are selling the confidence that a business can build on top of them and explain that decision to customers, lawyers, managers, or regulators. That is real value. At the same time, cheaper global models are also real value. They push the market. They pressure prices. They give builders alternatives. They create fallback options. They prevent the AI world from becoming one closed scoreboard where the top lab controls every workflow. That is why this story is not about one side winning today. It is about the market becoming multi-model. You may use Claude for one task, ChatGPT for another, Gemini for another, GLM for high volume or experimental work, local models for private tasks, a specialized video model for creative work, a coding agent for software projects, a desktop assistant for workflow actions. That is how people actually use tools once the market matures. At first, everyone wants one best answer. Later, people build a toolbox, and this week's AI news points in that direction. Anthropic shows that the strongest United States labs can still move fast, but they are moving inside a heavier safety and oversight environment. Sonnet 5 shows that frontier capability is being pushed into more affordable everyday access. GLM 5.2 shows that global alternatives can challenge the cost structure and give developers another path. Kling AI's funding, if we zoom out, shows that China's AI momentum is not only about chat models. It is also hitting video, creators, and consumer tools. That does not mean every Chinese AI tool should be treated the same. It does not mean China is suddenly winning everything. It does not mean United States labs are falling apart. It means the center of gravity is spreading. The global AI market is no longer waiting for one company to decide the future. It is becoming a network of models, regions, platforms, and price points. And for everyday users, that can be good. More competition can mean cheaper tools. More competition can mean faster upgrades. More competition can mean more options for creators, developers, students, and small businesses. But more options also create more responsibility. If every model has different strengths, costs, safety rules, and data considerations, then users need better judgment. You do not just ask, what is the best model? You ask, what is the best model for this task? What data am I giving it? How expensive is this workflow at scale? Do I need the absolute top model or just a good enough model that is available and affordable? What happens if access changes? What happens if the model refuses? What happens if the provider changes pricing? What happens if I need to move the workflow somewhere else? That is the practical version of the AI race, not the leaderboard race, the workflow race. So what does this mean for people watching who are not trying to become AI researchers? It means the next phase of AI will reward users who understand trade-offs. Power matters, but price matters too. Access matters, but safety matters too. Openness matters, but trust matters too. Convenience matters, but portability matters too. For a student, the best model might be the one that is easy to use, affordable, and good at explaining difficult material clearly. For a creator, the best model might be the one that understands voice, helps organize ideas, and does not make the process feel generic. For a developer, the best model might depend on the task. One model for planning architecture, another for generating code, another for cheap testing, another for reviewing sensitive parts of the project. For a small business, the best model might be the one that saves time without creating data risk or unpredictable costs. For an enterprise team, the best model might not be the flashiest one. It might be the one legal, security, and operations teams can actually approve. That is why the smartest AI might not win every time. The best model in a lab is not always the best model in a workflow. And this is where users should be careful not to overreact. Fable 5, returning does not mean regulation is always bad. GLM 5.2, getting attention does not mean every user should move sensitive work to an overseas model. Sonnet 5 becoming stronger does not mean all other models are irrelevant. Kling raising billions does not mean every creator tool will suddenly belong to China. These are signals, not final answers. The signal is that the AI market is becoming more layered. At the top, you have powerful frontier models that may be shaped by safety, oversight, and access decisions. Below that, you have increasingly capable everyday models that can bring agentic work to more users. Beside that, you have cheaper global models that pressure the economics. Around that, you have creative tools, video models, local models, open models, and specialized apps. The user has more choice than ever, but choice only helps if you understand what you are choosing. That is the final takeaway. The AI race is not ending with one model. It is becoming a system of trade-offs. The model you use for everyday writing may not be the model you use for private business planning. The model you use for cheap app testing may not be the model you use for sensitive data. The model you use for speed may not be the model you use for trust. The model you use for research may not be the model you use for creative production. That is not a problem. That is how mature tool ecosystems work. And this is why the game plan by Dylon ecosystem exists around these channels and prompt products. The goal is not just to chase every new model name. The goal is to help people think clearly, ask better questions, build better workflows, and stay flexible as the tools change. If you want the full ecosystem, the channels, and the product page, check the link tree in the description. So the honest final answer is this. The smartest AI might not win anymore, not because intelligence stopped mattering. Intelligence still matters. But intelligence is only one part of the decision. The future of AI will also be decided by availability, affordability, trust, safety, data rules, tool support, workflow fit, and whether people can build on the model without feeling like access could disappear, costs could explode, or the rules could change overnight. Anthropic's Fable 5 return showed what controlled frontier access looks like. Sonnet 5 showed how stronger capability can move into everyday use. AIRealm 5.2 showed that cheaper global alternatives are becoming serious enough to change the conversation. And the broader market is showing that AI is moving away from one winner and toward many usable paths. That is probably better for users, but only if users learn how to choose. Because the next big AI question is not only which model is smartest, it is which model is right for this part of my life. And that is the question that will define the next stage of AI.